Okay, I can see you all still coming in. We're going to get started though on today's webinar. Hello to everybody and to our regulars. If you are in there, you just joined SheCanCode's live webinar called What Tech Recruiters Are Really Looking For. I'm your host for today, Kaylee Batesman, the Managing Director, Community and Partnerships at SheCanCode. For those tuning in who aren't familiar with us, SheCanCode is a collaborative community working together to tackle the tech gender gap. You can join our community platform to find a supportive network of like-minded individuals, new opportunities and guidance to help you to excel in your tech career. Before I introduce our wonderful speakers for today, please note that we have a live Q&A session that is running throughout this webinar. So please submit your questions and we will try and get to them at the end. So let's kick off with my wonderful speakers. I have Marzhan Anglamas, Early Years Recruiter at Wise, and I have Nick Boulton, CEO of Client Server with me today. Thank you both very much for taking time out to join us. We would love to hear a little bit about you both, if that's okay, to set the scene for our listeners. Mara, should we start with you?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much, Kali. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me today here. And thank you again, Kylie and the SheCanCode team for putting this together. Very excited. I'm Mara. I'm a senior early careers recruiter at Wise. I've spent last 5 years with Wise in different roles, supporting different level of engineering teams. Since last year, I'm supporting our early careers team, or we call it as well as a Wise Start team. My focus is basically finding the next generation of engineering talent to our to the company to help us build the future of borderless money at Wise. So yeah, very excited. Thanks so much.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us today. We're very pleased to have you on board and to offer your insights to our community. And Nick, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks, Kaylee, and thank you for hosting the webinar. I'm Nick Boulton. I'm CEO of Client Server. We're a full-service IT technology recruitment consultancy. We're in our 27th year, which sounds frightening, but covering kind of UK, Europe, US, very tech-focused from a very deep knowledge in lots of verticals, kind of being very specific in kind of SMEs, startups, hedge funds, consultancies. And yeah, it's been a journey for the last few years, but it feels like the market's getting better and things are improving.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, the tech industry, it goes through so many ups and downs, which is one of the challenges, but really nice things about working in tech, at least, that it is always moving, but we are one of those industries that it has to kind of get used to change all the time. So yeah, it's a good thing. We have so much to cover today because our community absolutely love this webinar. We have run it a few times and our wonderful community members on the line always want to know what you are looking for as tech recruiters. So we're running it again and yeah, we're really interested to hear your insights today. So we're going to get started. Mara, I wanted to start with you. What is the biggest mistake that you see candidates making during the application process that prevents them from progressing, even when they have the right technical skills?
Yeah. Yes, Kylie. So when we think about application process, we should divide it into several areas. It's not one single thing that would impact them along their journey, but there are several areas like application stage, recruiter stage, if there is a recruiter stage, obviously, yeah, screening round, and then as well as technical interviews. So I've seen so many amazing candidates, technically gifted, and they have all their technical skills. However, they don't progress into from one stage to another due to several reasons. So I wanted to maybe divide it into several areas. So initially, what usually blocks them to progress from application stage to initial recruiter call. So mainly it's candidates use on their CVs like identical CV to all applications they might apply for. So they might put simply a list of, I don't know, different types of 20 different programming language without giving the context of what what it's about. Recruiters, as a recruiter advice, I want to see basically applied problem-solving skills of candidates. Yeah, what if you're working on personal project, tell me why behind this project. Yeah, any constraints that you overcame. If your CV doesn't show me how you think, you look exactly someone who just copy pasted the same formula for other roles, and it doesn't have this tailored approach. Another stage is the recruiter screen, or different companies, different stage to early career hiring process. Maybe it might be like a pre-recorded videos. We often see that the gap in motivational side or value alignment. In the companies, when you apply, the companies like Wise, for example, yeah, so alignment with our culture isn't just a tick box that you have to you just bypass it or leave it to next stages, but it's something very core and heavily weighted part of our cultural evaluation or actual evaluation, along with the technical skills. So when you come to that specific stage, learning about company, learning about the why do you want to join the Wise, for example, in this case, India, and what you want to gain from this role, and not simple generic maybe answer, well, the company is big or it's in tech domain, I want to grow in my role. That might be the main blockers to pass this particular stage. Rather, talking about and learning about company's mission, what they're trying to solve to their customers, what's their mission that you want to also contribute into. Yeah. And then finally, when another stage that where the technical skill isn't the definite indicator of the candidate's skills, is also the final interview, where candidates tend to switch into, I guess, exam mode, where they go into technical interview, they don't accept it as a pair programming round or the collaborative round with their potential future colleagues. And they basically do not collaborate, do not communicate the problems with their potential future colleagues. They zone out and then basically treat it as an exam. So, for example, this year we wrapped up our hiring process for 2026. And the main thing that we notice is that candidates fail in collaborating part, mainly with the interviewers. So we, along with technical skills, we also assess heavily on learning potentials and their motivation. So that's one of the things, meaning that how well do you ask questions, yeah, initially, to understand the task and requirements. How do you get along with some things? You don't always know all the codes, yeah. So if you forget syntax, what's the alternative way you approach it? How do you treat the interview? How you communicate it through with your potential future teammates? I think these are the key things that usually candidates sometimes fail to take into consideration. They might think that we are looking for only like a silent genius coders, but in fact it's not. We look for a potential. We look for someone who would work along with the team and who would be very adaptable, who has a great potential in learning side as well. So to summarize, I guess that's one thing, that to think that having great technical skills will land the job for you. It's not. There are different areas that you think about, which are more on learning potentials, motivation, and specifically about the job, and the overall your understanding of the product or the problem that you are solving when we are talking about CV.
Yes, and there's so many layers to what you just said as well, because if you are just cutting and pasting your CV into every application, it's not going to tick anything that you just said there. So sometimes it's just a case of slowing it down, which sounds like you're doing yourself a disservice, because you would just think, I just apply for everything. Like, that's how I got my first job. and just apply for everything. But actually, you're best just slowing it down and tailoring it along the way, because a lot of the time you don't tick all of the boxes for a job ad anyway, but you can almost see that if there's somebody's just cut and pasted their application and just pinged it your way without any thought there. Absolutely makes sense. Nick, what kind of mistakes do you see candidates making? And I also wanted to throw the question in there. Have you noticed that people keep using ChatGPT to write their CVs? Because a recruiter told me that recently, and she said every time I get a CV that I can just take one look and think that was written by ChatGPT. She said word for word, it's almost the same. Do you see that? And what kind of other mistakes do you see?
So yeah, I think Mara's answered every single mistake a candidate makes. So brilliant. But there's two parts. One, to answer your question on AI, yes, we see a lot of CVs that are AI generated and formatted, and I think kind of screening your CV or checking that it's, laid out in the right format's great. I think if you're asking AI to generate your CV, one, it's very easy to spot. Two, it's very disingenuous, and clients will very quickly see that and see through it. I suppose that to add to what Mara said, one of the big things, let's assume someone's getting through a process because they're technically brilliant, is what sometimes you can find is one, they neglect preparation. So doing enough research on not only the company, but who you're interviewing with, what is the job, what are the specifics of it technically, and then going one step further, let's again assume they've done well and they've passed the first interview, is we quite often find with clients, if candidates struggle with a particular area of questioning or something on their CV, is they won't go back and then do some research. So when they come back to the next interview, being able to address that. And I think that adds a huge amount of value around showing willingness to want to learn and progress and improve, and also taking on board some sort of criticism or feedback and being able to demonstrate you can go away, research it, not suddenly become a genius overnight, but show that you've shown thought and taken a view on something that potentially you put in your CV and might not have done enough research on. And the other bit, which we see quite a lot of, is you'll get candidates that will progress through an interview, and I suppose we're different to Mara's, and Mara's specifically hiring for why, so probably gets asked the question more, is we'll get candidates come out of an interview process with a client who will have a lot of questions for us about the interview, and what they don't seem to quite piece together is like they need to, any flags or anything that comes out, they need to ask that at interview, because they're in the best position to be able to question a client, ask about it. Again, it shows interest and willing, and I think at a point where there's a lot of candidates on the market, you really need to differentiate yourself from everyone else. And I think that, I suppose, as you were both saying, is rather than applying for every job, take a bit of time, specifically figure out which of the roles are right for me. Make sure you're being specific about your application and your summary and what you're sending over. And I think having feedback, it's a two-way street, right? An interview, it's not just about them interviewing you. And I think the mistakes people do is that it's very one-sided. They'll answer the questions, be very passive, and I think clients want something different. They want someone that's a little bit more outgoing, being a little bit more proactive. And we see those types of candidates that they progress a lot more than the ones that technically might be just as good, but are a little bit more passive or a little quieter in their approach to the interviews.
Yes, and you know what? I love the fact as well that you mentioned at the start of your answer, you mentioned about people being able to take a little bit of criticism and feedback, because sometimes the way that somebody reacts throughout the interview process says a lot about them as well. And like you just said there, it's not actually always the technical skills that you've got on your CV, but that recruiter is also trying to figure out if you're a good cultural fit, how you would work in teams. I don't know if both of you have experienced this, but I've been at companies where we've been hiring, and sometimes you might, not everybody gets the job, and you will send like a, hey, we love meeting you, but you haven't made it through to the next round. We'd love to keep you on file for other opportunities. And I've had some terrible responses back, like, well, that just shows me I didn't want that job anyway, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, don't burn your bridges with employers, because that just shows that you might have, it's perhaps you might tick some technical boxes, but actually they're looking at how would you deal with feedback and criticism and learn from that. And so I love that you brought that up actually, because you learn a lot about that candidate throughout the interview process, not just the skills on their CVs. Have either of you ever had that before, where people can get a little bit annoyed that you've given them some feedback?
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of it, and I actually would go one first. So, two parts of that are one, as you said, is I think technology in itself is a very small world, even though it doesn't seem it. And
Yeah.
I think that responding with something like that, like it will come back to bite you at some stage, and there's no gain for you to do that. Funnily enough, one of the best people we've employed is someone that we turned down who came back with a thank you very much for the feedback. Really enjoyed. If there was another opportunity, I'd love to be able to come back and discuss what you said. And actually, we were like, you know what, it's such a good response. We'll get you back to have another chat.
Yep.
Yes.
And I think that, as you said, not everyone, doesn't matter how perfect you think you are, not everyone's going to get the job. There's a limited amount of opportunity. I think it's the reaction and what you take on board and how you learn from that going forward. But yeah, I mean, we have some horrendous replies to people being turned down,
Yeah.
which yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, as an example of myself, yeah. So back in 2020, before joining Wise, COVID hit, and I was in the process, and I was put on hold. And I was a silver medalist back then, and they told me explained the situation, and after a certain time, I replied them, and I think in a half a year or so, they restarted the process, and because I stayed in touch with them, because I kept checking in, I was able to get into a process and basically take it from where I left it. So that's also another like example of uh, being in touch and staying close, and after receiving rejection, still being positive and still showing the interest. I think it's another thing. And we've had cases where obviously where interview starts after interview finishes, in between. So when we talk about like live interviews, right, that when they come on site in the office, that tells a lot how potentially candidates would fit into the team, and how if they share the same understanding, same values as well. So we've seen some other different scenarios as well. And quite recently, another example of one of our candidates who was in process as an intern. Unfortunately, they were not selected last year, but they received the good feedback from us, explaining why they were rejected, and they actually got back to us and they mentioned it during the interview, like referring back to the feedback they received, what they worked on, and eventually they got hired this year. So that's a successful case, right? So it's just staying in touch, being positive minded, and staying close to your recruiters, I would say.
Yeah, such good advice, and that you can really learn from that. I always thought when I started interviewing, it must have taken me 10 interviews before I realized the things that I was doing wrong. Even that in itself, especially when you've left university and you're just starting, it's such a learning curve when you start interviewing. And to think that you will get your first job with the first interview you've ever been in, you have to learn from each of them and take that feedback on board, and think, I won't do that in my next interview. We all
It is.
learn.
Interviewing is a technique as well.
It is,
And
yeah.
I think people, what we see a lot of is people feel like they need to fill a silence or a void with some sort of information where it's, taking time to think about a question before you answer it, or it all becomes a technique of being comfortable with it. But you're right. It takes practice. And I think, as Mara said, I think the people that are most attractive are the ones that are proactive, positive, stay in contact, continue trying to update people on what they're doing, and whether it's 6 weeks, 6 months, that it'll definitely help you improve.
Yes, those that are really interested in your company, definitely. And talking of positive, the positive side of things, Nick, I wanted to ask you, when reviewing CVs for tech roles, what are
Yeah.
the specific things that immediately make a candidate stand out positively?
Um, so Mara touched on it actually. I'll answer it in reverse first up. The ones that don't are generic CVs, and you can see lots of them all the time because we have We have so many jobs that we're recruiting for at any one point in time. You can see people that have basically just sent their CV to 7 different roles, the exact same CV without taking any care. So I suppose the point is that stands out as not someone that you're going to think, right, I'd like to have an interview with. So I think that the people or candidates that stand out, the ones that have taken the time to read the job spec, research the company, and then write a CV, the kind of bones to that will still be their generic CV, but have written parts of it that match what they're looking for. They write their CV for the company and the job spec. So they will highlight the things that job spec is looking for that they've done. And I suppose the more specific it can be. So if you're, I don't know, writing, I've generically developed an API for XYZ, that's fine. But if you could say, I've developed an API that's increased turnaround by 40%, uptime by this amount of time, that like giving specifics, that really stands out. Because again, a lot of people write CVs either in the third person or as I was in this team that did this without being specifically clear about, well, I developed this specific API with these technologies to solve this problem and brought downtime by 40%. That really stands out. And I think, in a CV specifically, less is more. So not sort of mentioning every technology under the sun, mentioning everything, and just being very clear with what matches that. That really stands out in a CV. And I think, a lot of people do it still, but I still go straight to interests. What are their interests? If it's someone, what technical books they're reading, do they have a GitHub? What do they contribute to? Here's some links to what they do. That really stands out because it kind of highlights a passion or highlights a more than just it's a day job. So that I think's always huge. I'll always go straight to interests. And lastly, which I say to everyone, like a CV is it's a shop window into your life and your value. And I think a lot of people don't always take enough time to make sure the layout's perfect, the dates are perfect. There's no general basic font errors, spacing errors. You're writing code, so a spacing error will be a bug that makes something, that effectively will affect production code. If you can't double check your CV and make sure it's clear and precise, that's again, it stands out in the wrong way, but very clearly will stand out in the right way who's taken a bit more care. So I think, yes, it's a huge, people are going for generally 10, 15, 20% increases in pay. Like there needs a huge amount of value in that CV first up that makes a recruiter take it off the pile of 100 applications going, I really want to speak to that person, Kaylee, because she's got a great intro, great, specific match to what we're looking for and interests that match our business or, the client we're hiring for. So I think, yeah, just taking a bit of time with that, which I know Mara mentioned on the last question, but that's huge for us as recruiters looking, especially when we're looking across multiple industries and multiple clients, you're trying to figure out who's the right profile, and that's really big.
Yeah, especially with the interests. Even if sometimes I think even if it's not always related to the role or something in tech, but sometimes if you put even something that makes you stand out on your CV, like when you refer to candidates, you might not always remember the names, but you'll be like, I remember that, that lady, she said on her CV that she like run 6 marathons this
Yeah.
weekend, something ridiculous that she's put at the end. It's like, oh my god, like that's so incredible. But you almost remember the little things as well of those that stand out. And yeah, I love the fact of making the examples as well about how you actually contributed. We've been told on our podcast, shameless plug for our podcast, by the way, if people don't know, we have Spilling the Tea. And we've been told on there before about a brag book. So people keeping a brag book of the things that they do throughout their career, the projects they work on, and how they actually contributed. Because it is so easy to do exactly what you just said, Nick, where you write on a CV kind of what your team achieved, but you haven't specified how you did it, or even something that went wrong and how you dealt with that situation and moved forward as a team. All of those examples, you actually forget about a lot of the things that you work on until you're forced to sit down and think about the projects and how they went. So the brag book is something that I have taken with me.
Like that.
Like, write everything down that you are doing all the time, to make sure that you stand out, definitely.
Just to add on
Mara,
this,
yes.
yeah, Kylie. So, and also one thing is that CV is something that will be reviewed by recruiter, by your future interviewers, your team potential future team lead. So anything you write should be actual things that you have done. So don't think that the CV round, when it's done, it's done, but then it will come up in your next rounds, in your technical rounds, because every time our engineers, our interviewers, before going into the interview, they ask for CV to review and prepare themselves to meet the candidate and to ask questions from their CV. So the CV should be relevant to what you have actually done and things that you will be able to share and explain as well. So I think this is one thing that should be also taken into consideration.
You know what, that is such a good point as well. So I had a recruiter tell me recently, I didn't know people went this far, but they said that sometimes people will bend the truth slightly on their CV and it will come out on
Mm.
in the interview process. So things like that, like things that you have actually worked on, not that your team did, but you're trying to take credit for. But even things like a recruiter told me somebody had lied about going to Cambridge University, and the person on the call had actually gone to Cambridge, and they were asking them questions about like their experience there, and it was so obvious that that person had not studied at Cambridge. So things like that. Have you ever come up against anything like that where you're kind of looking at a candidate thinking, I don't think you're telling me everything? You kind of catch a vibe from someone.
Yes, I mean
I can see Nick like burst in to say yes.
we get it quite regularly. You know, yeah, I mean, it's funny in terms of, you know, I say I think it'll always come out. It's always you're never going to get, once they've done references and spoken to, you know, like you're wasting your own time doing it. It is I think the original thing which you asked around AI is what's happening. It quite often is it's there's an element of truth. It's an exaggerated truth that then people look at it and go, well, actually, that's really interesting. Let me ask you about it. And what it does is it leads you down a path where you can't prove or have any demonstrable background to like this information stuck on a CV, I mean, it's an automatic reject. So yeah, I won't go into some of the detail that people put in there, but we get a lot of CVs that are, yeah, complete rubbish.
Yes, I bet. Yeah, and it does come out in the wash, as they say, um, or on spilling the tea on our podcast. Is usually when we get to hear those types of things. Um, Mara, I wanted to ask you about how the tech hiring market has changed over the past 12 months. So, what skills or experiences are employers prioritising most right now? Because tech, it changes so fast, obviously. So, what do you think is being prioritised?
Hmm. So that's a good question, because we are wrapping up our hiring cohort for our early careers team this year. So last year, when we kickstarted the hiring process, we were basically tailoring our some technical task based on how the market was behaving. And then now that we are basically summarizing it, we see the feedback from our interviewers, from our engineers, giving how it changed and transformed over the last 9 months even, and what we are basically taking into as an advice to next cohort and to tailor our tasks as well. So last year the transformation has been completely massive. Obviously it's because of the AI is advancing by every month, every week, right? So it's moving super fast, and the real engineering world is becoming very much advanced in terms of using AI. So right now for tech world, or in specific for engineering, I think writing basic or like a standard code syntax is currently becoming something like tick box. So basically everyone should be able to do that, because AI can do it very much in a seconds right now. So because of that, currently employers, or even wise, we're shifting our focus on certain different directions. Like when we talk about specific engineering, it's basically deep understanding or comprehension of code reviews, and the critical thinking, analyzing the tasks. I think those are the three main areas that we are focusing right now. As an example, last year we actually, just to keep up with the AI, and which is becoming part of the daily life of engineers at Wise as well, that they don't code themselves right now, but they obviously use AI. That's why we integrate into our hiring process as a pilot and the trialing like AI pair programming track for our intern positions, that basically we're allowing them to go ahead and use ChatGPT or any other AI tools for technical assessment. So because everyone can prompt and we can use AI for our interview process, we're assessing more on code review side, code comprehension side, where we are trying to understand if individuals can basically determine or the code, if it's written by AI or it's written by human, and can they tell why this specific data or the specific data structure was chosen, if they can spot any sort of logic flaws or that AI missed or anything like that. And also other part is basically discussing the task, how the comprehending or reviewing code, finding those issues in that, and basically critically analyzing those tasks that they have been working on. I think those are the three main things that we are currently focusing on as we are moving and building up our technical tasks for upcoming years. So that would be the crucial, I guess, area that the skills that teams or companies will be assessing as we move forward.
That makes sense, yeah, especially with the getting them to analyze and talk about the tasks as well. That it's all great that we have AI to help us nowadays, but we also do need people that still understand how to do that. I couldn't just go off and suddenly say I'm a coder because I can get an AI platform to do it for me. You still need to be able to talk about the project, obviously, and what you're working on. So yeah, it's changed very much. Is that something that you've seen, Nick, as well, that things have really changed with the introduction of AI, and that the whole process has really changed in what you're looking for from candidates?
So yes, I suppose the biggest shift is 12, 18 months ago. AI, we still had a lot of suspicion around why were people using it, how were they using it, and as Mara said, people would do technical tests with AI and it'd be frowned upon. I'd say the biggest shift now is, rather than it being kind of tested in environments, it's now embedded in most companies, and there'd be an actual expectation that during a coding process, if you didn't use AI to speed up the process, make it more efficient and allow you to solve it quicker, that would be frowned upon. So I think the fact that it's now embedded in every walk of life that technology using, yes, that's a big shift. But the big thing for me is this is nothing new to technology. I think it's because AI is more mainstream and more accessible by the likes of you and I, who use it sort of on a daily basis. Technologists, when we used to hire heavily in the C++ area, which we do at the moment, as Boost and STL libraries got introduced into that was obviously only something a technologist would know and use, but the expectation was you would still have to explain what was going underneath the hood of a STL library and what it automated and what it allowed you to do. If you were still writing your code binary, you'd fail that interview because you hadn't used the right automated tools. This is kind of another iteration of that. People are expected to use it. They're expected to solve problems with it. They'd be expected to make sure that they know how to explain to an interviewer like why they're using it and how they're using it. I think as Mara said, the ones that will fail will stick in the problem, ask AI to solve it, and then expect a positive outcome. I think an interviewer is expecting you to have used AI, excuse me, done the original, basic coding, given it you, prompted it to take you in the direction you want to go, and then be able to explain how that outcomes come about. Excuse me. I think that's the biggest shift with AI, not that it's become bigger or more. It is just a fact. People use it all the time, and I think it's more engineers that have the ability to explain why they use it, how they use it, why they vibe code all the time, why they're using generative AI the whole time, large language models, what they use it for on a daily basis. That's the biggest shift. It's not that it's kind of suddenly become a thing. It's just, I think, because it's used by the wider population, it's just spoken about more, and
Mm.
it's entrenched in our lives. So I think that's a big thing. And the other thing we're seeing is or not seeing is continued is there's a lot of demand around data engineering, cloud computing, cloud infrastructure. All of these AI engines and agents are creating huge amounts of data, and where that's stored securely, how that's stored securely and efficiently, that's becoming really huge with a lot of our clients. So I think anyone in that space that's very sought after as well.
Yes, that's a good point as well. The types of roles have changed so much because a lot of people, obviously, the headlines previously were AI is stealing our jobs, and a lot of jobs, they've changed as a result of AI and what we can do. But yeah, that is a good point that there will be an uptick in those types of roles. Instead. So
Yeah.
that's a good point. I love the fact that you said you still need to know what's going on under the hood, which is very true.
It's I remember a client in finance explaining to me that it doesn't matter how good he always used a mechanic engineer, and all modern cars, you plug in a computer, it tells you what's going on. The best ones still know how to do that manually. They'll know how to use that, but
Yeah.
they know how it's put together, why it's put together, the outcomes of changing things. And it's no different to coding that. And I think whether they're using AI or they're using some form of standard libraries, understanding that, being able to explain why you're using that specifically for this task, that's the bit that's super important. Which I think not just I'm using it to make, give me the right answer, so hopefully I pass the interview. It's being able to explain that process.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
just to add on this, also using AI is also a skill now that
Mm.
engineers are expected to know. It's not only just putting the task and getting the answer, but asking the right questions from AI, giving it right prompts so that you would be able to get. So this is another side of, I guess, the skills that would be assessed as we go. It's one of the things that even now we see that, how candidates are interacting with AI, if they are able to use it as ask right questions in order to get right answers, how they put together those prompts. So that's apart from being able to analyze the code, but asking the right questions or prompt from AI is another side of things, I guess, would be like evaluated.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. Yeah, how they interact with AI to get the right answer, to double check their answers, and to know exactly what's going on under the hood as well. Yeah, the recruitment process has changed quite a bit from only 12 months ago. Um, Nick, what is the one piece of insider advice that you wish every job seeker knew about working with recruiters and navigating the hiring process?
Um, so I think what a lot of people misconstrue is they treat recruiters like gatekeepers rather than treating them as a resource. Like effectively, our jobs are only successful if you find the right people and fill a vacancy. So it's not. I think a lot of people go into a process with a recruiter thinking that we're a gatekeeper to them getting the dream job that they're looking for. I think wherever you can, hopefully having a positive experience during an interview, but I think wherever you can use a recruiter as a resource. So asking them lots of questions around what profiles have been successful, what is the hiring manager like? What culture does he have? What skills stand out to them? What does he like to discuss? I don't think enough candidates take advantage of that. I kind of said at the start that we were talking about writing specific CVs. I think that's great and a tick in the box. And then I think what people don't do is then link that with, you know, getting as much, Mara knows wise inside out, is getting as much information out of Mara about what to expect in the next stage. Specifically, what do they like? What do they want to talk about? What do they like to hear from successful candidates? And conversely, also is what where have people gone wrong before? There's very few. Certainly, in first instances, I think once you establish a relationship with a recruiter that you know and trust, you'll generally do that naturally. But I think in a first instance, they don't treat a recruiter enough like a resource. They just treat them as like well, you've told me no, you've given me no information, or and you're a gatekeeper. So yeah, my big tip would be get as much information as possible, glean what makes people successful, find out, specifically what that team, that culture, that team, that manager likes, and then get yourself prepared for being able to highlight. Clearly, you need to have demonstrated you've done something that's going to represent an interest to that business or that company, but really being able to explain that and draw that conclusion together of this is what I've done, this is why I think it fits, this is why my next position here would be worthwhile. But yeah, using a recruiter as a resource would be a big thing I'd suggest to people.
Yeah, that's great advice as well, because even if you do get a rejection from the role that you're going for, if that recruiter, got some really good feedback about you,
Mm.
they're going to keep you in mind for something else. It could be something even better than what they originally reached out to you for. So, yeah,
Yeah.
and to hear that feedback from a recruiter as well. I have found from the recruiters that have reached out to me and I've done interviews, you get the best feedback from recruiters because
Yeah.
they're brutally honest, and sometimes you need to hear the brutally honest, and they will support you in that way. It's never a, we're annoyed you didn't get the job because this happened. It's kind of a, we'd love to reach out if something else comes up. But you're right, using them as a resource is really valuable. It's not just somebody that is there to get you the job and that's it, and you
Yeah.
never hear from them again.
Yeah, just to add on this, so absolutely agree with Nick. And on top of that, I think it's also like, as you said, like when I work with one role, it's not one role that I work with. I
Mm.
work with candidate. I want to hire the candidate so I can find ways to find other opportunities. Maybe it will open in a month's time. Maybe I already have some, my other colleagues might be already working with some other roles where this candidate would be a great fit. So internally, we're able to basically not, when you apply to one role, it doesn't mean that if you are rejected from that role, doors are shut down. There are other opportunities where recruiters basically communicate and show your profile to other hiring managers, basically advocate for your profile. So that's the like, don't give up. I would say, like,
Yeah.
stay
Yeah.
close to your recruiter, and always, like, recruiters really vouch for you. They want you to be successful because we want our company to prosper. So if you're a great candidate, you will be fit, and then we want to also hire you, be it with the role that a recruiter working right now or in the future, or some other teams are hiring and you might be a good fit.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And Mara, do you have any insider advice that you wish every job seeker knew?
Yeah, I think it's apart from this, I think, like, don't forget that AI is great. Yes, everything is like, there are a lot of things that are automated, but behind all the application reviews, there are human being like myself, Nick. We still review. It's not automated. It's not like a random CRM that you get in and you might get auto rejected. Roles, like specific roles in technical fields, are being like even in volume recruitment, the recruiters check it and the recruiters check it. So don't think that you will pass this ATS system, some questions and stuff, and just to put the random things in order to pass ATS, and that might potentially be reviewed by AI. It's not. Believe me, in all big companies, we check it ourselves. So don't assume that, and make sure that that's tailored for human being, not just for to pass the ATS system, I would say. So even at every single stage, recruitment processes, application process is very high, um, uh, very competitive. That's why to just make sure that when you apply, you assume that, and at the on the other side of the screen there's a human watching it. So keep that in mind. Don't think about passing it through system just in different ways, through AI or ATS systems. There's always a human watching it.
I'm so pleased you mentioned that. We've had quite a few community members ask us that
Mhm.
recently, because they're worried that with AI coming into some recruitment processes, that they're just being dismissed. And a lot of our community members have said to us, and even in in-person events we've been at, they've been like, I'm just totally not even being seen anymore. Like there is that worry that you're just not being seen by the recruiter. So the more that we can get our partners saying, yes, you are being seen by humans, don't worry about that. It almost puts people at ease a little bit, I suppose. But
yeah, I completely agree. The AI is just a new target for people to say, "Oh, I'm just being screened out by an AI agent." Like 20 years ago, it sounds ages ago, we'd still get told, "Oh, no one's looked at my CV. I've just got an automated response." Someone's always looked at the CV. The fact that there hasn't been a positive response, well, that can happen. And I completely agree with Mark. It's not a you still need that human element to be able to judge whether someone is right or potentially right for a role. So yeah, I completely agree. It's not it's not something now that will be used as a primary source of screening people out. It's still a person at the end of it.
yes.
Yeah, and we have this one stage where we request candidates because it's quite a lot of applicants that we receive. Unfortunately, we don't get a chance to do the screening, recruiter screening, live recruiter screening. So they do the pre-recorded videos, and we've recently seen quite a few video recordings that's generated by AI. So it's not the actual human representing it. So I guess like the assumption is that it won't be watched by human, and if you answer the question in a way that is tailored to answer that question correctly, let's say successfully. But unfortunately, we watched it and we were not able to progress with those candidates because it wasn't them, it was AI. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and it's a minefield for recruiters at the moment as well. We have some questions in our Q&A. Alyssa, you got in there first, and there's quite a few questions in here, so I'm going to scoop through these and see how many we can get through. But Alyssa says, thank you so much for organising this webinar. Have a few questions. So it says, I'm a QA engineer, manual, trying to transition to software engineering. I have tried to apply to internships, apprenticeships, junior roles, but so far I've only got auto rejections. I suppose it's because I have no commercial experience yet. I'm also not a student because she finished uni a long time ago, so I don't qualify for graduate roles. Is there anything I can do to stand out to recruiters? It says here she writes cover letters where available, have pet projects on my CV. Is a simple PDF file. So she's not sure how to progress past the application stage. That is very difficult, isn't it? When you don't quite have that commercial experience, like how do you get past that and try and stand out? You know what? We always say, come along to things like our hackathon, like try and get like little projects that you're doing or any kind of experience in that way that you can just add to your CV to try and help you flesh out that picture. Is that things that you see or any way that you think she can get past that first stage?
Yeah, so well, there's two parts to that. One, I agree with what you said about that. So I would always encourage anyone that's trying to cross-train or move from one technology area to another. It's always going to be slightly tricky because you obviously have people who are experienced who've done it that you're up against. So you need to be able to show a point of difference. So as you said, like any projects you've done, any courses you've done, anything like that, highlighting that. But I'm a big advocate for going for, look at some companies that you're interested in. Are they doing any tech events? Are they doing this type of thing? Getting in front of people and speaking to people. It doesn't matter what's on someone's CV. I think if you can talk to someone in an environment where they're hiring or they're looking to hire and be able to demonstrate that you've got great communication skills, you're willing to learn, you're like, that definitely helps. I think the tricky thing with applying for jobs that are outside of your skill set when you've got experiences, you're always going to be up against a challenge. So you've got to try and find a point of difference. I wouldn't just apply to a job. I would apply to the job, phone someone that's attached to that job, explaining why you've done it, why you're looking to change, why you're looking to cross train. And I would say, anyone that's doing that, you probably need to do a little bit of self-investment as well, as like try and do some online courses, try and get yourself qualified in an area that you can then demonstrate, this is what I've invested in myself, cross-training into a new area where there's more likely than an employer or a recruiter will be like, okay, well, you've taken the time to do this yourself and invest, I'll have a conversation. I think if the expectation is, well, look, I'd really like to apply to a job, I used to do this skill set, this, I know I need to move into this direction. Someone give me a chance. At the moment, that's really tough. So I think wherever you can highlight some experience and proactivity around what you've done, and yeah, get yourself to any kind of hackathon events, talking text or anything like that, where you can speak to people and engage with people.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And just to add on this, I think it's just thinking about the grad or intern positions as like only of ultimate path to like junior roles is not correct. There are many companies like ourselves as well who does also apprenticeship, career switcher positions for junior roles. So there are many companies that also hire regardless of the grad pass or the intern pass. So just make sure to look into those areas, I would say. And also um, manual QA isn't like a disadvantage, I would say. Like it's actually great because all engineers are expected to be able to do the QA side, be it manual, and obviously like automation is one of the areas. So I think like positioning yourself not as a as QA who is transitioning to engineer might be a bit of like a not positioning correctly. Positioning yourself as an engineer who had the past background as a QA would be the right approach. And then plus, as Nick said, like, get involved into different projects, hackathons, or events that would showcase all personal projects that you might have already or done. So coming blank only with manual may not be the right approach, but like already working with your skills, but at the same time applying and showcasing would be the best approach to land the job. And also like events, communities, and the different hackathons would really, really help for sure. Good luck.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice. And she's also asked in here about recruiters' view of using AI by candidates, because she noticed a lot of companies use AI to generate their job postings, which is very true. I suppose there's a balance there, though, that if you run a job description through AI and almost ask for your CV to match it or your cover letter to match it, there is a balance, because sometimes ChatGPT will spit something out and you think that doesn't sound like me at all. Even if I got that, I'd get on an interview and they'd think there's such a disconnect as well between what ChatGPT actually spat out for you on your behalf and then when they actually speak to you on the interview. So there is a balance between taking that job application, getting some help from AI, but I think then, making it your own is such a good thing. She's asked here about cover letters as well. I've always struggled with cover letters. She's asked you, have you got any good examples? Like, you must see the most boring cover letters. Do you see anything where you're like, that was good, somebody really put their heart and soul into that, or you've seen some really awful ones?
A bit of both. I mean, a bit of both. The thing is, covering letters they're very subjective, and it depends who's reading it. And the ones I always steer away from is someone who writes, I'm passionate, competitive, team player. That's done. Well, everyone knows that. No one writes, I'm not very nice to talk to. I don't like being in a team. I don't. So
Yeah.
trying to steer away from generic stuff is really important. I think a covering letter is not I think some people can write them that come across like a letter of wishes, and this is what I'm looking to achieve. I think not a massive fan of covering letters, summaries on a CV that explain who you are, what you've done very succinctly. Perfect. It's an introduction to your CV, basically.
Yes, she's asked that in here as well, about if you can't submit a cover letter, should I put that on my CV? Yes, that summary on a CV. Sometimes you'll only read that paragraph and then you think, you'll keep reading or you won't keep reading after that paragraph.
I very rarely, if ever, read a covering letter. I will read the summary in the CV. Like yeah, as I said, a covering letter generally is written as someone's letter of wishes or reasons why they think they're right for the role. I'll phone them and talk to you why I think you're right for the role. I don't think necessarily a covering letter does anyone any favors, unless a company, quite often you'll have sort of C-suite or board level roles where they'll say, please submit a covering letter, explaining why you're right for the role. But I think, yeah, having a very good, clear, succinct summary as an introduction to a CV and why it is why it is what it is. And actually, as Mara said, I think anyone changing tech area kind of generistically kind of wrap yourself as an engineer really good. As Mara said, like I'm a QA transitioning, straight away you're thinking, well, why are you transitioning? What's been the problem? But I think if you write, I'm an engineer that's come from a background in QA who's now, evolving into a whatever the technology might be. Here's my personal projects. Here's it reads a lot better and we'll get a lot more engagement.
Yes, and all the skills that you're bringing
Yeah,
with you.
exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
I,
Yes,
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry. I just couldn't come up with the time that we actually required CV or cover letter for engineering roles. I don't think if it's not requirement and you don't see them as a requirement, it's not expected of you. I don't think now it's like something that is most of the roles that we have, we don't require them. So like if it's not required, then that's it. Like as Nick said, like the in the CV, like the general overview is the place I guess recruiters now look at mostly.
Yes. And she's also asked, I love this, when recruiters say, we'll keep your file for the future, do you really mean it? Or is it to soften the auto rejection? I love that. Thank you, Alyssa.
So you go, Mara, you go.
Yeah, we really mean it. I would say like it depends at the stages as well, obviously, yeah. But then if the recruiter personally explained the reasons they are rejecting, maybe roles were filled, maybe there were candidates who slightly better match the role that we are hiring for, and they get back to you with the feedback, and then they provide. We really mean. One of the examples we recently we filled the roles and we had to reject the candidates who were about to progress to final interview. We had to reject, but after 2 months we got additional headcount, and I went back to those candidates. I said I would come back, and then they were so happy about it. And we really mean it when we see that there are opportunities. We absolutely get back to that, I would say.
Yeah,
That's really
I completely agree. I think because we're hiring for such a variety and breadth of client technology area, and I suppose the slight difference from Mara and us as a recruitment consultancy is we get paid a premium to find people with the right skills. So I would actively tell our consultants that if someone is good, but we won't be able to help them, to tell them, listen, unfortunately, you've got a great skill set. Unfortunately, coming through us for this specific role, you won't be right for. I'm sure you'll find the right role. I would expect any of my consultants that are saying, we'll keep your CV on file. It's because we genuinely mean we've either had roles in the past or have roles coming up that we think you will be suitable for at some stage. So yeah, I completely agree. We wouldn't say that unless we would definitely be thinking there's a role or opportunity at some point that we could help you with.
good. That's a relief. Um, Connie, hi Connie. She has said, thank you so much for holding this webinar again. I've had a few interviews this year and reached the final stages twice, but I haven't received offers. Feedback I get is quite vague. Another candidate was a better fit, etc. How can I figure out what's holding me back? That's quite tough if the feedback is vague. You don't quite know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry that Connie's got to two finals and hasn't got a job yet, but I think personally, I think if you've been through an entire interview process and you have got to final, none of our clients to us would go, unfortunately, the other candidate's a better fit. I think if you've given up that much time and you have given up or prepared yourself and been good enough to get to a final, you will genuinely generally get more feedback than that. And if not, I would push back on the recruiter saying, thank you for the feedback. This is my fourth interview stage. I've taken some time out of work. I've done whatever. Could you please be a little bit more specific, some feedback so it would help me improve for the next interview? I think that would be my view. That's the least that they could do. That at first stage, there's four candidates. They might say, look, the other three candidates are just a better fit. That's a kind of initial screening. But I think if you're getting to final, you're preparing yourself for interview and giving up your time. You'd be well. I would recommend asking for more feedback, but in a nice professional way. Just how can I would love some feedback to help me improve for my next round of interviews or the next time that I apply.
Yes, Definitely. Actually, because someone else they've moved this on in here. I can't see a name for this, but it said that you mentioned that interviewing is a skill, and I completely agree. I've been in my current role for about 10 years, so I haven't actually used my interview skills for a while. So that actually feedback would really help this person. And it says, I'm not actively looking for a new role, but would it be worthwhile to regularly apply for jobs, to go to interviews, to almost to practice these skills again? That's a good point. If you can get the feedback, then it would help you for when you do want that role, I suppose.
I mean, I wouldn't advocate for going to an interview just for interview preparation because again, the IT world's a small place and you don't want to get down a process.
No,
They go, oh
yeah,
gosh, Kaylee, we'd love you to join us here. And you go, yeah, actually, no, thanks. I'm not really looking. I think, well, there's two bits. Someone that's been in their role for 10 years, I bet they're probably doing some interviewing themselves as in for their company. And you'll be surprised about how many skills you pick up by doing interviews of other people. I think the simple thing of that is when you're ready to start looking for a role is speaking to a recruitment company then and saying that. I haven't interviewed for 10 years. I'd love some interview help, hints, advice. We do that all the time with lots of people. We'll run them through interview scenarios. We'll do dummy calls with them, lots of things like that, because that's a very easy thing for a recruiter to help people with.
yes. There are so many interesting questions in here today. We're going to skip through this because we're nearly out of time, and I want to make sure that everybody gets these questions. Millie has said, we've all read that women don't apply for roles unless they tick all the boxes, something I'm guilty of too, she says. I'm wondering how much of a job description do I need to really meet? How can I figure out what are the non-negotiables? I mean, if you don't tick any boxes, I probably would give that one a miss. But how many would you say you need to tick?
So she's absolutely right. Like women generally, females in technology do not apply to as many roles they probably could get. I think from you don't look at it as a tick box exercise. I think if you're reading a job spec or description of a company that's, a company you're interested in, a description that meets like, I think I could do some of that. I've done some of that before. My view is like apply. I don't. Personally, I think if you meet 20% of the expectation, like as you said, if you meet nothing, don't apply. If you've got 5 years and it says 10, if you're paid, I don't know, £20 and the role's offering £100, clearly you're not qualified enough at £20. It's just making some kind of intelligent determinations around that. But I think what people misinterpret a lot, and I think men are way more open to sending their CV and giving it a chance, is a job description is it's a list of wishes. At no point does anyone who gets that job have all of those technologies. They will have at best maybe 30 or 40%, maybe 50, but what you'll end up doing is through the discussion interview, the stuff that they know is very relevant, very specific to the role they're hiring, and that's what they'll focus on. I'm of the view of if you read a job description and while you're reading it, you're like, sounds a bit like me. I've done some of that stuff. I don't have these tech and I don't have this, but I have that. Apply to the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I've got actually two questions in here that are almost related. Someone has said, I've been out the workforce for 3 years raising children and I'm trying to return to tech. How should I present my career break on a CV? But the person below it, whose name I can't see, has also said, have a quick question. Is there such a thing as too many job moves? I've had 4 jobs in 5 years. So we've got someone with a career break and then actually somebody that has moved around quite a bit. How do you paint a picture of that on your CV? Do you see either of those as, red flags, or how do you see that when you see that on a CV?
So in terms of maternity leave or career break, right? My first advice is don't try to hide it. So this is I believe, the standard process where there are some career breaks that might happen. And the important thing is to explain why this was there and what did you do during that period and before and after. So how are you prepared for this role that you are applying for? I would say that's the main thing. Like a hiding wouldn't help at all. So there shouldn't be something that we should be hiding or ashamed of. It's a standard process where the career gap happens. But the essential thing is when you are applying to the role? Do you meet the expectations for that specific role? Responsibilities is something you've done, and during that career break, was there any work that you've worked on, and how you are planning to get into the market back? So I think those are the things that I could advise. When it comes to the changing roles within 5 years for companies, it's a bit tricky one. I believe that when you join a company, in order for you to learn about the company or learn about the product that they're working and to solve and make impact in that area is essential for recruiters also to understand if there has been any sort of impact that candidate could make during that period of time, be it a year or 5 years. There are different roles, different responsibilities, right? So as long as the candidate can explain what were the reasons, there might be layoffs, there might be, I guess, like a different other scenarios that the person might got impacted. So as long as you can back up and explain that situation, because recruiters might ask like, hey, what was the reason that you left this job or the other things, and as long as there is an explanation to that, and maybe there might be the case that we see quite often that someone worked in one place for 10 years and then after that they have had several changes, because after staying in one place for a long time, maybe the culture fit, culture alignment with one company may not have worked, and then they might have switched as well. So explaining the reasons of why that the quick change happened is quite essential and important as well, I would say.
Excellent advice. There's one last question in here as well. Yes or no answer. What are your thoughts on LinkedIn Easy Apply? Yes or no?
No.
No.
Mara, yes or no? LinkedIn Easy Apply.
Really, there's no like a yes or no answer, to be honest. There are some roles where it works, and the volume roles. There are some specific roles, and maybe depending the levels, that the companies may not even offer it as an option. So yes and no for me from my side.
Yeah. And Alyssa says, thank you so much. Your answers were super helpful to her. And to Alyssa and anybody else on the line who is looking for a new role, please do drop us a line in the community as well, and make sure that you alert one of us, because SheCanCode community might be able to help you as well. So thank you, everybody. I'm so sorry we're out of time, because I could keep talking to you both on this topic for a lot longer. So thank you very, very much. And to our speakers, Nick and Mara, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you for taking time out to share your insights with our community today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having us, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you both. And to everybody listening, thank you all for joining us as always and for supporting our community. We hope to see you on our next webinar month after next about women's wellness. We would love to see you there. And to anybody who hasn't seen our blog, SheCanCode.io, and our podcast, Spilling the Tea, please do take a look. But thank you always to our community members and to our wonderful partners who are always supporting us along the way. We couldn't do it without you. So we hope to see you again next time, everybody. It's been a pleasure. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.